In my books about, especially the book about Congo and the book I wrote about it, a journey I made in India called Indian Balm, again for very personal family reasons it's called that. There's a big biographical element. And then when I went and wrote a book about Portugal, essentially Portugal and a bit of Spain, there's a lot of biographical stuff in that. And then after those books I wrote a book about the last few months actually of Sir Walter Raleigh's life. And I wrote about when he arrived back from South America without the gold that James I wanted him to bring back. A relation of his actually was sent to arrest him and bring him back to London and eventually to the chopping block. I wrote a book about that short period of time, but of course informed by stories that come out of his whole life. So it's very much a biographical book and a treatment of his last days, because I came across information in the records of the family of the man who arrested him, which historians and biographers hadn't really taken note of and looked at, and I've just made new connections and found some fascinating stories associated with that last few months of Raleigh's life. The books that I've written are so full of. It's very hard to summarise them or to even give a sort of taste of them, because there's so much sort of amazing experience that I was lucky enough to have in these places, and you know, so many stories which of course are in the books, but it's ridiculous to try and give a clue really almost. Anyhow, one of the things that happened to me when I was travelling up the Congo River, I did in a series of stages on rusty old riverboats and then dugout canoes and things that I was travelling on. And I travelled 1,000 miles up on the river itself. And on one of the legs of that journey, I got up one morning and I was looking out over the river. The river at that point is 15 miles wide, which is quite an interesting concept if you think of a river which is 15 miles wide. I was looking into the far distance where the forest was, but in fact I could hardly see anything because there was a thick, very, very thick mist, peering into the mist, very bright mist. And I was also feeling rather unwell because I had some dodgy antelope the night before, and I was feeling a bit grim. And I was looking into this bright mist and feeling pretty queasy and leaning on the rail of the boat, and a man came up to me and he asked me how I was, and I said I was feeling a bit dodgy, and he said, I think somebody on one of the barges. Now, these little riverboats, stern wheel paddlers, they push huge barges in front of them as they go up the river with lots of traders and lots of goods which are going from the city up through the forest to another city in the far end, and there's a whole economy of trade which goes on all the way up and down the river. Anyhow, he said, I think someone's got some soda water on the one of the barges. That might do you some good. We're doing this in pidgin French, you understand. And he's a Congolese trader himself, and so I thought, okay, I'll wait for him. But it's so bright. I went in and put my glasses on, and I'm standing looking out into this view, the river going past, which was endlessly fascinating. And I suddenly thought, oh, he may not recognise me with my glasses on. And for an instant, I'd completely forgotten that I was the only white man on the boat. You know, but you do get into that sort of state of well, I don't know, stupidity, I suppose. But just where your perspective suddenly completely shifts and you become so involved in experience, you forget very basic things like that. When I was in India, one of the destinations of my kind of trip up the river Godavari, in this case, I was on the Congo in Africa, and the river Godavari in India. I was in the Eastern Ghats, the mountains on the east side of the subcontinent, and the river runs through a spectacular gorge there, and up in the high jungle at the sides of the river. There are tribal people living there who are nothing to do with Hindu castes, kind of India or Muslim India. They are tribal people with their own religion, and they still, I discovered, still practice human sacrifice. And I remember being taken up by an Indian who was a Plains Indian who'd come up to live in this place. He wasn't a native there, but he took me up through the jungle, climb, very, very hot, in order to get to see some of these people. And people, as we started out, some women were really talking to me, and I was I was being very, polite to them and waving goodbye and all that sort of thing. And it was only much later when we came back. He couldn't speak English. I couldn't speak his language, but between us, we sort of, with sign language and the help of, general sort of intuition, I suppose. I discovered anyway, eventually, when we came back, that he had been being berated by these women for taking me up into a place where I might have been kidnapped and sacrificed. But I didn't realise that till we came back. I did see the signs. I did see the signs of previous human sacrifices and so forth. But it was an interesting experience, and coming back down very, very steep climb down the hills, the mountains we would call them. But I completely wrecked my feet. I'd been wearing sandals for months, and in order to do this climb, I put on some sort of sneaker type things to climb the hills, and got the most horrendous blisters and lost quite a few toenails as I, after coming down the mountain, which was extremely impressive. But it made me, I must say, venerate my great-great-grandfather, who had been out there at the time of the Indian Mutiny and had done the same sort of trip that I was doing. And I thought, wow, these guys who were there in a very different time and a very different context were quite some characters to do the kind of exploration and journeys that they did. Now, this is a strange little box that I've invented, and it's got an arrow pointing down on one side, and it's got an arrow pointing up on the other side, and it's got a rubber band, which is anyway. But that's the thing. Now, the thing is, inside the box, there's something inside, and the only way I can get it out is by pouring out what's inside. In fact, it's another little ball. But in order to pour it out, I have to have the arrow pointing upwards. Okay, that makes sense, doesn't it? The arrow's got to be pointing upwards. Look, little bouncing ball. Nice little bouncing ball, yeah? Like that. Now, if I put the ball into the box, I've got to have the arrow pointing downwards. The ball's always got to follow the arrow. Like that, into the box. Okay. Now, I can put the lid on, like that, and the ball's in the box. But, how do I get the ball out of the box? I have to turn it over like that, because the ball has to follow the arrow. Do you see what I mean? And then it comes out. Right. Alright, okay. Look, ball goes into the box, follows the arrow. Put the lid on like that, I can shake the box, I can turn it over like that, the arrow comes up, the bottom comes to the top, top comes to the bottom, and the ball comes out the bottom of the box, you see. Because it follows the arrow. Okay, look, I can put the ball into the box, follows the arrow, put the lid on, and it comes out of the box. I don't even need the lid, I can just put it straight into the box as long as it follows the arrow. Shake it like that, turn it over, the arrow comes up, the bottom comes to the top, and the ball comes out the bottom. Now, you may be confused by that, but you imagine how the ball must feel. I tell you what, the ball loses all its bounce.